also just done outside in the open air. So you can see here cooking over an outdoor fire. And then the roads I wanted to share as well. As I mentioned, it's very challenging to get to the next big city simply because of the state of the roads. So there's a city nearby called Anse Rouge. It takes maybe half an hour to get there, 40 minutes. It's right on the coast. But the nearest big city is Gonaïves. It's about 20 kilometers away, but it takes a little over 2 hours to make the drive from Plaine de l'Aube to Gonaïves, again, simply because of the state of the roads. So here you can see the mud kind of off in the distance, but when you really get in the thick of it, you can see just how deep it is, how saturated that roadbed is. And every time a car passes through, these ruts get a little bit worse and a little bit deeper. And so when that mud does dry up, which is somewhat rare, you know, the road itself is rutted and bumpy and just difficult to navigate.
Megan,
we were in a yeah.
It's 9:15. Excuse me, and my bell is changing. I know
Yeah.
there may be some questions, and we do want to have a few minutes because I think they only have 10 minutes before they'll change class. So what I'm asking the
Okay.
teachers to do is to text them to me, and I'll ask the
Okay.
questions. So I know one
Okay.
question that was asked by Ms. Troop was, how are the schools funded?
Okay. Very, very poorly is the best answer I can give. So the students do pay tuition and pay fees for books and such. The national school is in part government funded, and the other two schools that are affiliated with churches do get some funding from the congregations. But for example, at the Adventist school in that meeting, I was told that they don't have enough money to pay their teachers their full salary, and so you know, they're only receiving a portion of the funding that they need. But because they want to ensure that the students are getting an education, the teachers continue to teach on just a portion of the salary that they ought to be earning. And so, you know, I think they rely somewhat.
The second question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Megan, the second question
No.
is, how do they get hot water?
They put water over the fire to boil, which is why you have to temper hot and cold water together, because they just bring it to boiling and use that boiled water.
Okay, another question is, what are the main forms of trash and what are they throwing away?
So the main form of trash, I would say, is plastic, and kind of every variety of plastic imaginable. You've got styrofoam, a lot of plastic bottles and plastic bags. You'll see things like plastic patio chairs in these waste piles. Tires are another big one. I think in this picture you can see a tire here, and this is kind of a common sight, especially along waterways, is just mounds and mounds of trash. So all of this along the bank of this river is plastic waste. Glass and metal do get reused or recycled much more commonly. the plastic and organic materials.
Okay, another question that Ms. Beverly asked is, if they don't have money, how do they get satellite?
I think the Baptist school is probably getting a more regular donation, and my guess is I don't know the answer to that question specifically, but my guess is that they are getting support specifically for that project. Just knowing how nonprofits work in terms of money allocation, a lot of times if you say money is intended for, you know, providing internet for this school, when you donate the funds, it has to go to that purpose. And so even if they have money coming in for that, they may not be allowed to allocate it to building or other needs on site.
Okay, so another question is, and this is from Miss Mayer. Since they do not have
Uh-huh.
cafeterias at school, how long is the school day?
They end school around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I think each school was a little bit different, but it's still a pretty full school day. But they do send kids home for lunch in the middle of the day.
Okay, so another question is from Miss Beverly is, how do they get food if they don't have money?
They are largely the community is subsistence farmers. I didn't get to the pictures about agriculture, but a lot of the households are smallholder farmers. So they're growing their own corn, okra, millet, kind of some of the staples. And then they do earn enough that they can go into Anse Rouge or Go Naive and buy rice in bulk. Most of the households are also raising their own goats, their own chickens, turkeys, pigs, and slaughtering their own.
Would you want to take those?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't move my camera because that's what caused me to drop earlier. So
Okay.
I'll have kids come over. Damien, what was your question? Come over quickly. Come closer, right there. There. Say hey. Say hi.
What material do they hunt their animals with?
Did you hear that?
Not quite.
Louder.
What material do they hunt their animals with?
Do they hunt?
What materials do they hunt their animals with?
So they're not hunting so much as they're raising animals on their own property for meat. It's more like livestock than hunting. So they've got herds of goats that they use their own agricultural land to feed. And then as far as actually processing the animals, you know, they're using a machete and knives to process the animals for food.
What is your question?
How do they like get them computers when they don't have money?
Okay, same way they kind of get the same way they get the satellites, which is there's an organization and they allocate funds for that. Does anybody have a different question, Davi?
How is their recess?
Come on.
What? We have recess. Oh.
Okay, and Sophia? We didn't get a chance to filter these ones, so we're filtering through. Okay, Sophia, and you have to speak loudly because we're going through technology. Come on over, come. This is my silent Sophia. Come closer. Okay, what's your question? Has there ever been a movie filmed in that country?
I'm sure there has. I don't think there has in Plaine de l'Aube, but I'm sure in Port-au-Prince and other parts of the country. I couldn't name one.
Maybe when we go there, we'll film our own movie, huh?
Maybe so, yeah.
Megan, I have a question if you have a second.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Miss Beverly. I'll wait until you're finished.
You're good to go.
Megan, I have a question. What resources are local to the area that they can use for construction or building?
Great question.
And what's the skill level of the people in the community?
So the as you saw, the majority of construction is cinder blocks and cement. There is actually a cement plant not very far. They are harvesting. When you drive from Gonaïves to Plaine de l'Aube, you see holes basically dug in the side of the mountains where they're harvesting rock and sand right there. So that's very readily available. One thing that I'm really interested in exploring is straw bale buildings, because they do produce a lot of rice in the area, and most of the waste from the rice gets burnt off. But rice straw is actually when it's baled is an excellent building material as well. As far as skill level, I would say it varies, but it's, the majority of the community is employed either in agriculture or some form of labor. And so I think kind of general knowledge of construction in the area is probably fairly common among people in the community.
I do have one more question. I noticed that all the trash was piled up,
Mm-hmm.
and I do they have like a daily burning or a weekly burning, or I mean, how do they get rid of it?
I don't know if it's that formal, that regulated. I think it's kind of on an as needed basis, but you'll often the distance areas where trash is being burned.
Okay.
I think the school does it a little bit more regularly.
Oh, okay. And I have another question. Considering the limited school resources available, what techniques do students use to learn, and what do they learn? Are they learning general course subjects?
Kind of what you would expect: math, basic science, geography. They learn both Creole and French. They're not learning English particularly, at least not in the earlier grades. And they do have, they have school books and such available. We're short on time. I could go into kind of an interesting story, but I'll maybe save that.
We'll get you. I have got 2 or 3 students who have individual questions, and I'll
Okay.
try to ask them to go loud and fast.
Okay.
What percent of your country is under the poverty line?
That is a good question. It's a large percent, but I don't know the number off the top of my head. Could I maybe email that to you?
That would be wonderful. You email it to Mr. Grant, and he can get it. He can distribute it to all this. I have Sophia with another question.
Okay.
Do you have any water filtration systems?
I did not see any filtration in place. We are planning to build biosand filters as part of the rainwater harvest project, and hopefully expand that over time.
Okay, and I've got another question from Renee.
What do the students learn at school?
We just talked about that. If you could
I
just,
didn't
she said, what are the children